All right, saddle up, partner, 'cause old Buck Jacuzzi's got his hat on and his boots kicked up for this one. Now, y'all ever watch Silverado? Yeah, that 1985 Western that strutted onto the scene like a tumbleweed dipped in neon lights. It was like somebody bottled up the spirit of John Wayne, tossed in some Raiders of the Lost Ark swagger, and shook it up with a dash of Kevin Costner before he even knew how to pronounce a blockbuster. But here's the kicker. Hidden under all that dust, dynamite, and gun smoke is a secret. A love story, y'all. One that was supposed to shake things up for Kevin Kline's Paden and Rosanna Arquette's Hannah. It was shot, scripted, and ready to roll. So why in tarnation did it vanish quicker than a canteen of water in the Mojave? Sit tight, 'cause we're heading straight into the heart of Silverado. The cast, the chaos, and the love scene Hollywood swept under the rug like a bad poker hand. When Silverado rolled into theaters back in '85, it was like someone slapped a fresh coat of paint on the Old West and told it to smile pretty. Lawrence Kasdan, fresh off throwing curveballs with The Empire Strikes Back and Raiders of the Lost Ark, decided it was time to rope in the Western genre and teach it to dance again. He brought along a posse that could have headlined its own rodeo: Kevin Kline, Scott Glenn, Danny Glover, and a young Kevin Costner still trying to figure out where to park his horse. Heck, I reckon this was the first time Costner looked at a six-shooter and thought, yeah, I could get used to this. Kasdan and his brother Mark penned the script with the kind of love for westerns that makes you want to squint into the sun and spit for dramatic effect. Now the story, well, it's a straight shooter. Four unlikely amigos, Paden, Emmett, Mal, and Jake, find themselves in the rough and tumble town of Silverado, taking on corrupt sheriffs, shady ranchers, and about every two-bit outlaw this side of Dodge City. Along the way, we meet Rosanna Arquette as Hannah, a settler with dreams bigger than a Texas sky. But here's the thing, old Hannah was supposed to be more than just a pretty face to nod at between gunfights. In the original cut, she wasn't just passing through Paden's life like a tumbleweed. No, sir, she was his love interest. There was a whole subplot sizzling on the stove, ready to pour a little heart into all that six-shooting. But come showtime, that romance was chopped cleaner than firewood in December. Arquette's name still showed up big in the credits, but most of her scenes went up in smoke. Why? Well, Kasdan figured it'd muddy up the story. Said he wanted to focus on the brotherhood and the adventure. But I reckon if you ask him now, he might scratch his head and wonder if maybe, just maybe, he trimmed a bit too close to the bone. But don't hitch up your saddle just yet, 'cause that's only the tip of the cactus. The way they filmed this thing was a rodeo all its own. They shot it out in New Mexico where the dust doesn't just get in your eyes, it sets up camp and starts charging rent. Kasdan wasn't playing around either. They built a full-blown town from the ground up. Not just some hollow shells like you see in them cheap westerns where you open the saloon doors and there's nothing but plywood and good intention. Now, this was the real deal with fully furnished interiors that made you want to order a whiskey just to feel proper. It wasn't just for show, neither. That kind of setup meant when bullets started flying, the camera could just roll right through it all without skipping a beat. That's attention to detail, folks. The kind of thing that makes you smell the gunpowder right through the screen. But here's where it gets real interesting. That set didn't just collect dust after Silverado wrapped up. It went on to become the go-to backdrop for a whole parade of westerns. Young Guns, Wyatt Earp, Lonesome Dove, and even Wild Wild West. And if you're watching close in Wild Wild West, you'll spot a cheeky little nod to Lawrence Kasdan himself. Kasdan Ironworks, stamped right there on the side of one of them buildings. Reckon that's what you call leaving your mark on the Wild West. And it wasn't just the scenery that was legit. Kasdan made his cast do cowboy boot camp, riding horses, roping cattle, learning how to draw iron like they'd been doing it since they could walk. Now Kevin Costner, that fella took to it like a duck to water. By the time the cameras rolled, Costner was twirling revolvers and shooting from the hip, so smooth you'd think he'd been robbing banks in his spare time. Some of them flashy stunts he did, totally unscripted, he'd just whip out his iron and spin it around like he was born with it in his hand. I reckon folks on set started wondering if Costner was acting or just being himself with a bigger hat. Old Kev wasn't just practicing between takes, he was putting on a show. Crew members would gather just to watch him spin that colt like he was auditioning for a Wild West circus. But it wasn't all smooth riding. That New Mexico sun don't play. Cast and crew had to be hosed down between takes just to keep from melting like ice cream on a tailgate. Horses dropping from heat stroke, stunt schedules getting shuffled. Let's just say the Wild West was about as hospitable as a rattlesnake in a sock drawer. But you know what? They got it done. And when that dust settled, Silverado was a sight to see. It didn't just bring back the Western, it gave it a fresh coat of grit. Critics loved the wide open shots, the shootouts, the way it felt like an old friend had just wandered back into town. But you know what was missing? That spark between Paden and Hannah, that tender little subplot that could have brought a bit of soft to all that rough. Rosanna Arquette's talked about it since, said she wished folks got to see the whole story. According to her, the scenes were there and the chemistry between her and Kline was hotter than a July bonfire. But it just didn't make the cut. To this day, folks wonder what Silverado could have been if that romance had stayed saddled up instead of riding off into the sunset before it even got a chance. Top billing in the credits, but a ghost in the final reel. Ain't that just the way sometimes? Now, I reckon it's your turn to spill. Did you know about that lost love story? Think the movie would have been better with a bit more heart to go with all that lead? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't you forget to hitch your wagon to this channel for more Hollywood tales, hotter than a skillet on a Sunday. And if you ain't subscribed yet, well, I reckon that's something you ought to fix quicker than a three-legged mule in a horse race. Now, go on and tell me, would Silverado have been even grander with a little more Arquette and a little less floor scrap? Or did Kazdan's quick draw editing make it the legend it is today? Either way, partner, I'll be right here in this old hot tub ready to hash it out with you.